Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this special virtual speaker event that is taking the place of our 15th annual meeting of the members for the AzCDL, the Arizona Citizens Defense League, the only Arizona civil rights, civil liberties organization to get pro-rights bills introduced in every legislative session that they have been involved in. Such an amazing organization. We normally have our meeting of the members every October and in person, but since we're in the year 2020 and everyone everywhere is pivoting, this is our version of that pivot. I am Cheryl Todd, host of Gun Freedom Radio, and I am personally passionate about supporting everything that the Arizona Citizens Defense League does, and I encourage you to check them out. And if you're not already a member, please join at AzCDL.org. I am excited right now to introduce you to our special guest speaker, who also is a personal dear friend of mine, Kevin Dixie, goes by KD, but I can't get past calling him Kevin. I'll be stuck on Kevin forever. He is the owner and operator of No Other Choice Firearms Training, the NOC, and he's the founder of Aiming for the Truth. It's a six-spoked approach to healing broken families and strengthening the community bonds of neighbors to improve the lives of people in the cities and states of our nation. This program is focused on getting to the roots of the factors that are driving violence in our communities, rather than blaming firearms or the actions of violent people. Kevin has also designed the first firearm that fights the lies of gun control. It's an H&K PV9 platform handgun, and it is titled and named The Truth. Love it. Fantastic. So I will, without too much further ado, turn the floor over to Kevin. Every time he speaks, it is electrifying, it is educational, and I know that you are in for a huge treat. Kevin Dixie, thank you so much for joining us, and I give you the floor.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. I really appreciate you. You're always a gem to talk to and a good friend. And I greatly appreciate you and the family for all you do behind the scenes that people never get a chance to see. So we greatly appreciate you. And to the good people in Arizona and all around the nation, but to the good people in Arizona, I want to begin by saying thank you for not giving up. Thank you for constantly pushing forward. I understand that fighting in the mud with people that are trying to take our rights is a daunting task. It is dirty, it is tiring, it is relentless, and yet you guys haven't given up. So thank you very much for that, because if one of us fall, we can all fall. So what you're doing on your forefront is helping me all the way across the country. So I greatly appreciate that. And giving you more fuel for your tank is what I wanted to do today. And I wanted you guys to have even more, not only more energy, not to be revitalized, but even more weaponry, if you will, so to speak, when it comes to dealing with people that are telling you that your freedom is a bad thing, right? That you shouldn't have the right to be free. And I wish I could be in your face today to really, pour into you, because we all need to be rejuvenated from time to time. But let me start off by saying this. We have to make sure that we are looking at things from the different angles in the world, right? So you might fight for the Second Amendment because you go back to 1776 and that date is so important to you, and you fight, and you would hate to see a world where Britain was still in rule over America, and nothing is wrong with that. And if that drives you, let it drive you. Keep going, right? But what else can we add to it? So when we're having a conversation with other Americans, sometimes, and we're all guilty of it, myself included, sometimes we can get so focused on fighting for our freedoms, we forget what we're fighting for, right? We forget that we're fighting for every American to be treated equally. We forget that we're fighting to make sure that the government stays in a place of, I don't want to say checked, but guess what? They should be checked. It's kind of what it is. I was trying to be PC there, but it is what it is. We forget that our fellow Americans are also fighting the same government that we understand is just waiting for its chance to be tyrannical. Well, there is tyranny that's already happening in small pockets to individuals around the country. But sometimes we get so focused on other things that we believe in or our own viewpoint that we either ignore or cast aside the concerns of others. And a lot of people think that, hey, well, you know what, that doesn't have anything to do with the Second Amendment. So why would I get involved? Why would I have an opinion? And sometimes you're right. In certain platforms, in certain places, there are certain things that you just don't want to say. You don't want to start a fire. You're not real educated on the subject. Well, let me help you get a little educated right now. People often ask, why when it comes to guns, do you bring up race? And I'll tell people why. It's not just because race is a cool thing to play off of, but it's factual. You think about politics, right? No matter which way you feel about politicians, we're into a presidential election cycle right now, and both sides are talking about Blacks and Hispanics, right? The people don't have the microphone. The ones that are hoping to be elected to represent the country for the next 4 years have the microphone, but yet they're bringing it up. That tells you that race plays a part, whether we like it or not. And I understand in many aspects, we want to get over it, but guess what? We aren't. So, but when it comes to guns and your freedom, how does that play a part? So let me just ask you guys a question, and I want you to ponder upon this. You in your heart right now, because I'm not going to accuse you of anything other than what I'm about to say. You in your heart right now want every single American to absorb and honor every single right and freedom that everyone else in this country has, and come in and help everyone else fight for more freedoms, more liberties, right? That is what we do as good people, all right? We want to bring people into the fold and into the fight. Now, what happens is we have the same approach when we talk to them, right? So if you're going to go and talk to a buddy that lives down the street from you, there may or may not be a good chance that bringing up 1776 and bringing up corrupt politicians might work, right? And the reason I say might work, because nothing's 100%, but guess what? You're kind of in the same area, and because we understand our environments, we somewhat know how to communicate with the people in those environments. Now, granted, there are going to be people that don't fit the mold, but you kind of have a viewpoint of those around you, and you know how to speak to them, even when they disagree with you. But what happens when you separate yourself from everything you've known and you go somewhere else to where other Americans are having different concerns, their viewpoints are different, you don't speak the same lingo, things are just totally different, right? You don't understand half the stuff that's going on around you. Well, when you sit down, let's just say with an African American or Black American, whatever you're comfortable with, when you sit down with them, and let's just say they are not about guns. They're just like, I don't get it. And when you say 1776 to me, yeah, my heart doesn't flutter. Well, you'll be stopped like, guys, this is our country. 1776 is when, you know, we gained our independence. Come on, you got to get behind that. And you're wondering why they won't wake up. You're wondering why their shoulders won't get strong and their chest won't go out. And you're trying to get them pumped because this is what you know and you're passionate about it. And this is before we get to talking about self-defense, which is something more people can relate to. But we're just really trying to get to the hearts and minds of it. And you're like, God, man, I don't get it. You're frustrated. It's like grabbing at air. I'm here to help you. I'm here to help you. Here's the honest to God truth. In 1776, and the days leading to 1776, or the years leading up to that, there were a group of people called patriots. They got tired. They got really tired. They didn't want to go through being told what to do anymore, taxed without representation, having their homes looted, having people take their possessions, having people take their crops, their stock, having soldiers just occupy their homes when they didn't want it. They got tired. You know what they did? They beat them up and kicked them out. Beat them up is nice. We know what they did, all right? They beat them up and they kicked them out. Now, in the midst of that, they had loyalists to the crown that were trying to tear them down and, you know, becoming saboteurs of the patriotic movement and things of that nature. So it was a real struggle, real fight. But guess what? America gained her independence. As nasty as it was, as hard as it was. She gained her independence. So when you look at 1776, if you know any of those fine details, you are passionate, and you should be. You absolutely should be. Well, why isn't the guy that you're talking to, that you view as equal, that you view as just as valued as yourself, that you respect, that you talk to, as somebody who matters, or opinion matters, they matter, which is why you're trying to get them to understand that they need to own a firearm, right? Because you care about them to some degree. But why doesn't that wake them up? Here's the thing America doesn't like to hear. In 1776, America fought from its freedom from Britain. Into the 1900s, I was still fighting for my freedom from America. That is factual. That is truthful, because this skin was not enough reason for me to be validated in this country. Since the 1600s, leading up to 1776, if you just want to stay in that pocket, when the Second Amendment was ratified, right? 1792 is when I think it was really put into place. Guess what? The Constitution nor the Second Amendment itself included me. They weren't talking to me. And here's the factual reasons why. This is not a point to get emotional. This is a point just to give you some perspective. If we wrote a law right now, me and all you guys out there and guys and gals listening, if we wrote a law right now about human beings, right? A law about us, about treatment or something like that, will we include our cars? Horses? We wouldn't. Cell phones? We wouldn't, because we're talking about the human beings. Well, guess what? That's all I was a piece of property, right? So there was no reason to include me, because we weren't valued as humans. So even when you look at, fast forward, when you look through our history, 1865, you take the state of Tennessee's Constitution. The Constitution read, and now this is, as time is going on, we're past 1776, and we're getting closer to the current times now. In 1865, Tennessee ratified its state constitution, all right, to basically read, and I'm paraphrasing, that all free men have the right to bear arms, right? They ratified it to read that all free white men have the right to bear arms. So once again, even when freedom was looming and there was a hint that there might be, freedom coming to all people, and we do need to value, African Americans as, Americans, then there were states, and I'm using Tennessee as an example, but there were states that went to say no. Even so much so, to go so far as when we had our Civil War, I don't know if anybody's ever read the Secession Letters, but you absolutely should read them. They were enlightening. The fact that Blacks wanted, the northern states wanted freedom for Negroes and Blacks, and that was absolutely not something that a lot of the southern states were about. And so they wrote that. If you read Mississippi's Secession Letter, it's like, wow, right? And there were other things going on. That wasn't the only issue. But when you look at that and you start talking about freedom, everybody doesn't view freedom the same way you do. And that's okay, because we have to look at the perspective. The thing about America is that it is such, overall, it has its flaws. Things are in error, absolutely. But America is such a great country in comparison to other countries with all their flaws, that sometimes we get a little arrogant and we forget things. Doesn't make us wrong. It just means we have work to do, and we shouldn't get too cocky, right? Because the only way we're going to remain a great nation is to constantly rebuild ourselves, is to constantly reinvent ourselves, and it's to constantly sometimes sit down and have a real face-to-face and say, okay, I've been screwing up. How do I get better, right? So that's what I'm trying to help you with today. Now, I'll lead you up into more modern times. Tulsa, Oklahoma, 1921. Black Wall Street. Black Wall Street is a community in the Tulsa, Oklahoma area. And you can imagine, right, we're talking the 20s, right? So you can imagine that segregation was kind of a thing, right? So the community did exactly what people are saying that many communities should do now. You need to become independent and you need to build up on your own. Well, guess what? They did. And here's where gun control really, really bothers me. Now that I hope you got a little bit of taste about how to present the message of freedom to other people, I want to tell you how it could have helped them. So as you're walking them through a timeline, some that might even make you uncomfortable, lead them into 1921. We get to 1921, and in Tulsa, Oklahoma, a self-sufficient community, the dollar stayed inside the community. It had everything you can imagine. You imagine Think of a local suburb by you right now that has everything in it, right? Like the pretty place to go. That's what Black Wall Street was. It was all black people, right? So long story short, there was a black kid who was a shoe shiner, and there was a young white woman that was an elevator operator. Black kid bumps the elevator operator. She screams. He's scared. It's the 20s. He runs. He's caught. He's placed in jail. Rumors go around that the mob is going to come hang him because how dare he touch a young white woman. Gentlemen from Black Wall Street went to the jail, armed primarily with long guns. Now, this is gonna make sense in a minute. Armed primarily with long guns. They're military veterans. These guys have been there, done that. They're trained with their guns. They go to the jail and basically say, hey, we're just here to make sure he gets his fair day in court. That's what we're here for. We're not gonna let a mob come hang him. Sheriff says, okay, just guys, we got it. We're not gonna let that happen. Just stay outside. They go outside. Here comes the mob to do what they said they wanted to do. This is the part of the story that is only plays second to the horrific incident that happened right after this encounter. A man walks up to the black gentleman, and he's not worried about the select long guns they have. One guy has a handgun tucked into his waistband, and he says, hey, N-word, what are you doing with that gun? And points to the handgun, and then attempts to take it from him. A struggle ensued, a shot went off, and what happened after that is that entire community of Black Wall Street was eradicated in 24 hours. Why are guns important and how do they play a part? Well, guess what? Because of Jim Crow laws and sort of the Army Navy laws at the time, Oklahoma adopted those laws, which made it difficult, if you will, for handguns to be owned by blacks. So they couldn't conceal a weapon. They would much rather you see you with it and not something you can easily conceal. However, Black Wall Street, they had enough money, they could kind of make things happen, right? But they had inadequate arms. Inadequate arms is the illusion of freedom. It's not true freedom, which is why we don't want people telling us what we can own. It's none of your concern, because if I bow down to you and you give me what you want me to have, that just makes me feel good. But it's the illusion of freedom. And while you got me believing that I'm free, what else can you pull over my eyes, right? So that's why we don't allow that. And since Black Wall Street can defend themselves, roughly 500 people were eradicated in 24 hours. And you talk about tyranny, the state police actually dropped gas bombs, if you will, on top of the town because they burnt it down. And so you can see an old picture with the crop plane with the logo on it. Google it, and it's right there for you. And they dropped bombs on this town. So the first bombs weren't even dropped in Pearl Harbor. They were dropped in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And they dropped bombs on this town. They murdered military soldiers in full guard, standing in their front yard. One story from one gentleman of the survivors is that their grandfather stood outside and they said, there's no way this mob will murder me because I served this country. I fought for this country. And he went and he stood outside in full guard, stood at attention, letting them know that I fought for this country. There's no way you're going to attack my family. Yeah, nope. They shot him in the head, burnt him, and burnt his house down. Okay, so, and the government helped with that. So we have to be aware that nobody's coming to save you. Inadequate arms means nothing. But guys, you have to understand how other people are looking at these things. For you to just say 1776 in Mono Labe, hey, cool, because you're not wrong. But do you want to win? Do you want to be right? Or do you want to win? Because when you just bank on being right, you would never be wrong, because who can argue with freedom? But one thing that the opposition of freedom does is they know how to play the field. And because we stick just to our core morals, we don't think we need anything else. You don't need to be deceiving, but you do need to be strategic. So I'm giving you something that you can go back to other people and talk about. Even when you look at gun control, I started out in California, I know a lot of people support Ronald Reagan. And I don't. Because Ronald Reagan looked at a group of individuals that looked like me, that decided they had enough and went to their state capitol armed, didn't shoot anybody, didn't point a gun at anybody. They did nothing different than what we see militia groups and 2A supporters do today. Like we just recently saw in Michigan. Nothing different. But guess what? They wrote a bill called the Morford Act that started the gun control we see now in California based off the color of somebody's skin. And that's when they started playing the media games and ruled that group a terrorist organization. That way the public wouldn't sympathize with them and allowed the gun control to go through because they allowed them to believe that the gun control was about stopping this domestic terrorist organization. And what they fooled them with is, yeah, once you support us getting them, then we're coming for you. And that's exactly what happened. And in America today, we are allowing that divide to occur, and we're not being smart about it. So in conclusion, be smart, be strategic. Think about how somebody else is thinking about it. What is this Hispanic American thinking about? What's their perspective, right? How do they see things, right? A Native American, oh my God, how do they see things? It's a whole nother conversation to have. So we have to make sure we're understanding these things, not just yelling at the crowd. And when it comes to individuals, everybody wants freedom, guys. It's never a question. Everybody wants it. They just want a version of it that's not really as pure as most of us believe in. So what we have to do is convince them that they're not safe with what they're going for. For example, and I don't get political, but I do, but I don't, because I don't side with one party over the other. What I will say is this: even as we roll into this upcoming election, here's something if you want to have just a conversation. Don't bring up anything other than what I'm about to say now. Don't start getting into, smells and all that jazz. All right, we all know it's funny and it's great for memes and we have a great time with it, but stick to this. 1994 crime bill, which is something that Joe Biden helped write, right? He was one of the authors of it. The 1994 crime bill. Joe Biden, Hillary and Bill Clinton have recently apologized for how it affected urban communities. They have admitted that it unfairly targeted and imprisoned Black men and broken up Black families and all the other consequences that came with that. Well, here's one thing about the 1994 crime bill, and this is how they divide America, and you don't see each other's perceptions. What they did to people like me in 94 is they put me in jail. I was in high school when Hillary stood on stage and said that I was a super predator. I remember that, okay? They put people like me in jail. I came up in the inner city. I went through some tough stuff, but I was also a kid that was trying to just make himself better and make my community better, right? But no, I'm a super predator. Okay. But then in the 1994 crime bill, there was a thing called the assault weapons ban. That, for 10 years until it sunsetted in 2004, you had a ban on assault weapons. So one community is like, oh crap, you're putting me in prison unfairly. 3 strikes, you're out for nonviolent crimes even, right? Unfair sentence practicing. And then the other side of the America is like, why are you taking my guns away? Here's the one thing you might miss about the 1994 crime bill. And I'll save you all the details. But in general, this is what happened. Hey, this side of the aisle said, yes, we know we're going to take away the fathers, the uncles, the brothers, pillars of these communities. We know that's going to happen. So tell you what, we're going to need this amount of money to go ahead and make sure that we can supplement that with community programs, welfare, sound familiar? And all these other gifts to make sure that we somehow make the mothers and the children okay. Oh, the other side said, absolutely not. You are not giving that money. Nope, too much money. We don't believe in that. How do we come to a compromise? Well, I'll tell you what, give me 2/3 of that money back. And so this side says, well, we give you 2/3 of the funds that we need to help this community out to make sure that they don't have problems in the future and somewhat, rebuild their families, at least financially. We need the money. No, you don't need the money, but how about we give you a 10-year ban on assault rifles? Fair trade. So one side allowed for the community to be underserved when they deprived them of everything, all the pillars of their community that they needed. The other side said, tell you what, I'll trade and I'll give you the guns, but you just need to give me back 2/3 of that money. 49 Republicans voted in favor of the 1994 crime bill, which included assault weapons. So we have to stop letting political people play games on us as well. But that's how you can have fair discussion with people. So they literally said, we're going to take away what one side of America really values, which is guns, to make sure that we can deprive another side of America about their resources. And then kind of extending beyond the gun point, even when we get to the day, we're still fighting like they're in the middle and they're our friends. They've always kept us divided. So if you want people to remain free, be able to see things from their viewpoint, be able to articulate things beyond your own viewpoint, because there are people out there that want better, but you need to give them the incentives to be better and fight for their freedom and understand what freedom is. Because those who think freedom is an overly used term or conditioned for slavery. So what we have to do is make sure that they're able to look beyond that. So I hope that information helped. I hope you dig more into it, and I hope you can sit down with your fellow American and realize that when you're going to talk to them about preserving their freedom and about resisting tyranny and about defending their lives, that sometimes you have to step outside of your own to see it their way. May God bless. Talk to you soon.
Wow, holy cow. There is so much there to unpack. Thank you for that, Kevin. And you're off the cuff. I mean, you're like rattling off historical dates and events and I wish that more people had that kind of um, familiarity with history. And I think your point is well taken that we're sitting here going, waving our flag, 1776, we got our freedom. And if that's our point, then we have to understand that, not every community, that was very well stated, not every community of people are going to have that same emotional connection to that, because freedom for Blacks in America didn't come until quite a bit later. And that it doesn't mean that we have to be ashamed of our history. It doesn't mean that we can't still be proud of what our founding fathers did in 1776. But I think that understanding that different cultures and different people are going to have different perspectives. Is that fair enough?
Oh, it's extremely fair. Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. Well, that whole 1994 crime bill thing, where our politicians, they're not our public servants when they're doing this. They are politicians. They are horse trading with something that doesn't belong to them. And they have cheerleaders on each side going, yeah, that's a great idea. And that's something that I think we all need to narrow in on and understand better, that, in the Second Amendment, going back to my 1776, the Bill of Rights, our founding fathers wrote, shall not be infringed, period, with the Second Amendment. And so anytime somebody's horse trading with bits and pieces and well, it's just the ARs, it's just the suppressors, it's just the bump stocks, that goes outside the bounds of shall not be infringed. And we need to hear it for what it is, and we need to react to it appropriately, and we need to be connected to our elected officials, because us sitting here talking to each other is awesome. It's amazing. This is, a digital format. It's going to be able to be shared, all over the world, really. But when we are not talking to our elected officials and engaging them on these topics, then things like the 1994 crime bill happen.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes, and we have to be careful with tribalism is dangerous. And I like to tell people, that's why I don't tell people how to vote. I don't tell you need to vote this way or that way, or no, it's not my job. Like, who am I to control your life in such a manner? Because voting is one of the great superpowers you have. It's not mine, it's yours. But what I would like to do is for people to understand that if you are blinded because of loyalty, who are you more loyal to? And I mean, really think about it. Do you want to be more loyal to a politician who is supposed to be your subordinate, right? Supposed to work for you?
Supposed
Or are you
to.
going to be more loyal to we the people? Because you can't have it both ways. And saying that I want to be more loyal to the politician and benefit of we the people that's not, you can't. You gotta be loyal to we the people, and then collectively, we the people can sit back, and they still might have opposing views, and hold everybody accountable. Can you imagine a world where no matter how you voted, every single voter held every single politician accountable for every single thing that they did? Can you imagine that?
That would
Right?
be a beautiful thing, and we would have such a different relationship. I think we would write the relationship, because we've gotten to a place where I think we're so like enamored of anybody that we think is well known or famous, that we see elected officials as celebrities, right? And oh, it's so exciting, this celebrity. No, they are our employees, really. And when we aren't interacting with them, they are representatives. That is what we've hired them to do as our employee. How are they going to represent us possibly if we have not communicated with them on a regular basis about what we think about this thing or that thing or this bill? And that is a piece that is so important. And I think that we they the they in this sentence is politicians, uh, and the media as well. I think they would have a much harder time of creating this divide that we're seeing in our nation, and making us afraid or unfamiliar with one another, so that we don't just band together and go, look, we have some certain rules, we have some certain guidelines, they're written down in our Constitution, our Bill of Rights. Our employee, our representative, took an oath to protect and defend this, and we're going to focus on that. That's our commonality.
Mm-hmm.
And we have all kinds of different cultural differences, and all kinds of other differences, but those things will be handled differently, and I think much more reasonably and peacefully than the way we are right now, where there is just so much craziness going on across the nation, and people, instead of finding the things that are common, are a common bond, and moving forward, we're shouting at each other, and it's just a mess. But anyway, did you have something that you wanted to add about that before I move on?
I would just say to everybody that with the current times, remain calm. I can tell you firsthand, if you listen to nothing else I say, for 10 years, what I did of my life, hyper focus for 10 years, is I closed cages on people in St. Louis City. That's what I did. When you messed up, you came to my house. And I can tell you now, which is why I titled my company No Other Choice, because I saw a lot of good people that just made a bad decision, right? And I saw their lives be ruined. I know what it's like to see families beaten on glass, to see family members break down, to see the soul essentially leave the body of an individual who understands they're going to be the property of the state or the federal government for X amount of years, or to go through the what if phase, right? Like, what's next? What's going to happen to me? I've seen people lose their homes. I've seen people have to lose their businesses. I've seen it for years. This is what I dealt with. And what I would tell people is, be calm and be rational. Now, be ready to protect yourself and your loved ones, absolutely. But be calm and rational in these times, because your emotions might charge you to believe in the moment something that you're doing is okay. And morally, it might be. But when things calm, the law is still going to hold you accountable. And although it might be cool to say, ride for the 2A and go do your thing and carry your gun, and if something happens, it happens, and great, go into harm's way. Let me tell you something that's easy for people to say that have never had to look in the face of individuals who just realize they've ruined their entire lives and look out through some pieces of glass and see that their family's going to miss them forever. Please be calm, be rational, stay alive, protect yourself, but please don't, because they're real. I also dealt with real animals. I'm the one that dealt with the rapists and the murderers, and that's what I did, right? But please stay calm, stay rational, and remember, the Second Amendment is great. You should always carry it with you, but it is also the ultimate source of responsibility. As people that carry guns, we are charged with being knowledgeable of the law, and we are charged with being the ultimate people responsible, because we carry the ultimate weapon, right? We do, or our mind is the ultimate weapon, but we carry the great equalizer, rather, right? So just make sure that unless somebody is going to cause hurt and harm to you immediately, or another person, extend God's grace and mercy as you would want extended to you onto others, unless they put your back against the wall and truly leave you with no other choice. At that point, you do what you have to do, guys. But be careful, be rational, be peaceful, and be true representatives of what the Second Amendment stands for. We can be poised and patient even through the midst of chaos, because that's what they believe we are not capable of doing.
Wow, that's beautifully said. Thank you so much for that. I'll just wrap up with one more question, and because we're here for the AzCDL meeting of the members, you know, being a member of a group, an organization alone is not enough by itself. It's part of doing your part, is what I like to say. But why would you say that it is so important to support not only national, but also local rights organizations that are working towards the Second Amendment?
Because the fight is unified, right? So if we only, which is great, so start locally. It's great to support local, because as that local subject matter expert, you're going to kind of know what's going on, what they're doing locally. Because remember, your governor might become the president. Like, so it's important. Like, your mayor might become the governor, and you kind of got to keep track of people, right? Your city council person might become your mayor. Like, so keeping track and supporting those grassroots organizations and being those subject matter experts and fixing and containing things at the state level and the local level is so important, because you have that insight, you have that knowledge, and you can actually mold these politicians before they grow on and go to do other things. Not only about how they should respect the Second Amendment, but the consequences if they don't, right? So that's a great thing. And then at the national level, those are organizations that can go all across the nation and do various things where they're needed, where they're called. So support those, because they're like the overlay, right? They're like the overlay. So if everybody's doing what they're doing locally and containing those states, and then they can glaze over everything, and when there's trouble in a hot spot, they can hop in and they can do stuff. So it's a truly unified front. None of us can do it alone. So that's back to being strategic. Support local and support national, and make sure you're active. Show up to rallies. If there is something else that comes up, I get it, man. People say that freedom isn't free. Well, you don't just have to play with blood. Sometimes it requires a little bit of money out the bank account, right? So there are other things that you should absolutely donate to and get active in. So I think at that local level is very important, because that's how you mold, mix, and you really learn. And then too, for the people that start out fighting at the local level, right, at the grassroots level, and donating there and being active and really getting involved, well, you're also training yourself, because we might have to call you up to the national level one day, right? But you've got so much experience doing it because you were actually active, not just sending a check, but actually active, that now when we need you, we can call you up to the national level, make you the face of a movement, or have you go speak somewhere, and we know that you're well educated because you've been in the mud for so long. You can come up to the next level and deliver the message in a powerful way. So do it all.
That's awesome. All right, Kevin Dixie, tell folks how they can follow you and find all the awesome work that you do.
Okay, the Google machine works. You can just plug in, excuse me, Kevin Dixie. That's D as in dog, IXIE. If you're looking on any social media platform, you can put in at The Real NOC. That is for The Real No Other Choice, because apparently there's some nightclub somewhere named No Other Choice. So The Real NOC will find me on all your social media platforms, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and so forth. You can also check out our website at nootherchoice.net. It is being redefined, but I promise you in 2 weeks, you're going to love it. Nootherchoice.net, or, shoot us an email at nocccw@gmail.com. But you punch me in a Google machine and I'll come up, and I look forward to engaging with you and seeing you guys at the freedom finish line.
That's fantastic. Thank you again so much for taking this time with us tonight and being part of our 15th annual AzCDL meeting of the members. Kevin, you're a treasure. Thank you so much.
No, it's been my pleasure. Thank you all.
And thank you all for joining us. And please be sure to like and share this video with all of your friends, especially maybe friends who aren't fully, well-versed or fully comfortable with the whole gun topic, because as you can see, this wasn't political. This was just historical. It was ideas that you can just kind of chat about over a nice dinner or in your carpool when we get to do that again someday when COVID goes away. But thank you again, Kevin. Thank you all for listening. And be sure you check out azcdl.org.